And the first question will be not really about design. Have you been ever before in Russia?
So I was here 15 years ago by the invitation of Monitor magazine, which at the time was led by Anna Yudina, who's now living in Paris. And what was it 15 years ago? What was quite strange was a contrast. I remember the exhibition took place into a high-end luxury shop in which they were selling super high-level Japanese fashion, and next to it was some big old truck moving some bricks. So in a certain way, that's what I remember. Plus, I remember we had a walk and a discussion nearby an old chocolate factory nearby a river, which was a nice time.
And the second question is about, I've read in one of your interviews that you would love to make a small boat for a Russian client. Have you had a chance to do that?
I always said I would love to do a small boat, but I never said for a Russian client. I don't know what I was saying.
That was in a Russian magazine, so they made it sound for Russian client.
But it is true that I do sometimes some sailing, and what I love the more is when the design has a reason, and inside a boat, most of the time, everything is in a certain way functional, but so you could say that that is the basic of design. But on top of all this, a boat strangely is really full of emotion. It attracts people. The language has a lot of deeper values than only its function. And I think it's what I search in design. Is what I've been putting this picture at the beginning. Is recently I find I'm always saying that for me the real goal of design is to give a shape to culture. Somehow everything in design has to be about function, and partially is a way to produce it. But the real goal on top of that is how do we look like as a culture? And if you look at this stone, carved stone from prehistoric age, it has many functions. It can cut, it can open many things, but there is something super strange inside it that has no function at all. It's the symmetry. Why did they make this thing symmetric? It has no need of being symmetric. It has no need of being well balanced. Function-wise, it has nothing. The real function behind it is to assume that you belong to a culture. Build the sign of your own culture. And inside a boat, yes, to me there is the same magic that you can find inside the stone. So if someone wants a small wood boat, I can design it if you need.
And how everything started? Where have you been studying, and what was your first project?
So for me and Ronan, it started really early. Actually, here are some of the first projects. We've been doing quite many prototypes that we were showing into exhibition fairs and things like this. And quite early we met Giulio Capellini, for which we made this one, the enclosed bed. Also this one, the combinative vases were done. So quite early, in a way, starting to produce for Capellini. And then a number of brands was like if you would be a football player starting super early in Liverpool or something like this. So we've been quite lucky at the beginning. And how everything started is I just find out that many of the early projects have had a kind of DNA that we've been reworking all the time. Now I'm totally convinced that some of the first things you do in school or things sometimes just open a way of mystery that you will always keep on searching. So in this project, there was this first one with the vase, which was something that we've been always and after trying to make some system in which people are playing with a number of elements so that they would permanently reconfigure the function. Then second one, this bed, the closed cabin, is what we've been calling at the time micro architecture, which means a kind of scale which is in between furniture and architecture. Something that would be easy to install and easy to move, but that would be a little bit more than a furniture. Then on this page, we've been quite always thinking about what can we do with our hands. I think it's evolving a lot, and as a product designer you always have to try to consider what people can do now. What is assembly methods, what is linking methods that are contemporary in a certain way. So this project about building were a lot about this. So yeah, it was the starting point.
What was the how client find you? How did you find this first collaboration? Just tell like more into details, because I know here many designers, young designers, who would be certainly interested in that. How they have seen you at the fair? What, like technically, how you find each other?
Yeah, exactly, on fairs, and also we've really been lucky to be French, because there is really a number at the time, and they still exist. In France, you have a lot of public grant to help prototyping. So I think is one of the first thing was this bed, the closed cabin. And I think what the manufacturer is looking for is never looking for a product when he's looking for someone else. He's looking for someone he wants to discuss with. The real thing about design is empathy. It means that you need to understand each other permanently. So you will never find a manufacturer that is picking a prototype and saying, I'm gonna produce it. That's never the way it works, because in a certain way, you can't really know the body of the company you're gonna work with. So you can't really dance with her without knowing the company. So I think at the end, potential editor, manufacturer, the more they look partially for an ability to do, to access to reality, and on the other end they look also for a certain conceptual vision, something which is a little bit broader than a product.
And after that, of course, you had so many collaborations with other companies, but just as a beginning, tell us about one of the projects, how it comes, everything from the idea till the real production, what are the steps, and maybe you can show us some concrete examples of that.
So, I think that if you compare design to cooking, at some point you have to consider techniques and material like raw flavor. It means that some techniques, for example, raw flavor. This looks like a piece of tuna. This is a technique which is called rough iron. So, fer forger, I hope the translator get it properly. Rough iron, it's a super old technique. Most of the time the gate of castle were made like this, or the axes to cut wood were done like this. This technique has so many flavor inside it. You just need to express it. And if you compare to cooking, you need it to take it sushi style. I mean, no way to decorate it, no way to make something. The technique is so strong, has a lot of so basic cultural value, because anybody knows it, but it's like hidden inside what we are. So in this case, we go through we make a lot of prototype directly in the studio, like in this thing that you see here. And what we look by those prototype is making a lot of small error that bring us to the very evidence, to the very last thing that stays to express what the material and the technique is. So in our studio, we draw. Of course, we make a lot of 3D modeling, and we make a lot of mock-ups. And when we make the mock-ups, none of us is a professional woodmaker. None of us is a professional welder for ironing. So when we do the thing, partially we go to all the error of a beginner. But often when we go to all the error of a beginner, we come back to the very basic central thing. The thing that expresses the more against the raw flavor. Don't change it, just try to express it. And in a certain way, you could say that engineering power is interesting, but the engineers somehow, they partially, so stitching for a sofa, research, the engineers somehow, they don't know the real technique. They know the super advanced technique, but often the super advanced technique has no meaning. If you start to show a car, for example, to a kid, the kid have no idea the way the car is built. He can't understand it. Maybe an old tractor, he understands it better. You see the engine, you see the wheel, you see the thing. So, super industrialized technique, you have to master them to make sure that you come back to what is the real technique, what is the real flavor, and not a super fake flavor. So, to come back to cooking, the old French way of cooking is totally wrong. Japanese way is much better.
And when you work at your studio, you work with your brother. You know, sometimes I don't know, it's a common way of saying that it's very hard to work with members from the family. Most probably you, like, how the process of negotiating with the,
It's super hard because it's not super clever. So I need to explain him many times basic things. That's the problem.
You sound like a real brother.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, the process of product design is most of the time to constrain the project. It's quite special. At the end, in product design, something that is a real rule to apply is to make things more and more simple all the time. That's worth doing, and in a certain way, that is one of the more important dogmas and the industry is asking for. So when we are building something, we need to cut down things that are not necessary. And the fact that we are two is one way to discuss everything in order to make things disappear. But to make things disappear is not so easy because, again, the real thing is the cultural value. and the cultural value, you don't find so much rational way to, in a certain way, value it. So sometimes we know that something is wrong in the project, and we fight on the wrong question. But that is a way to make the project suffer, and in a certain way got more condensed. So to work in a family background, I mean, it's amazing, but in both ways. It's amazing in the pleasure and in the common understanding, while it can be also amazing in the disagreement.
And how does it work? Sometimes you invent something and you bring it to the producers, to the factories, or it's always other way around, that clients come to you and asking you, we need a sofa or we need a table. How the process is?
Well, there is really different kind. Here you see the clouds we made for Quadrat. So typically Vitra, Quadrat, Ligne Rosée, matches. We are in permanent contact with them. We see each other nearly every month, twice a month. So everything is a permanent trial and error discussion. So really, in a certain way, the early beginning of something often starts, the black pose, often starts in a discussion, and I can't tell you when is this exact moment where they start. So it's super common. But in some other case, last year we launched a TV we designed for Samsung. So Samsung's, the gigantic Korean manufacturer, a number of prototypes directly inside the studio. So they came to the studio and they've seen things that we had been doing out of plywood or painting things, nothing like super detailed 3D thing. It was quite rough. And when we making what you will see here, a number of prototypes directly inside the studio. So they came to the studio and they've seen things that we had been doing out of plywood or painting things, nothing like super detailed 3D thing. It was quite rough. And when we did this, it was just to something. I think the best is when you can do things with your own background. So somehow, of course, it was electronic. It should be precise. It should be thinking. But still, we've been processing it like we do for furniture and things like this, so that the flavor I was mentioning before would kind of emerge naturally from the process. So in this case, we in Samsung, we already decided since the beginning we don't want to discuss. They came to us and say, we do TV, and in a certain way they disappeared. Because they just wanted at this very time to keep us super genuine, not knowing about the end reality. Because when you know a lot about the end reality, at some point you get totally transformed. Your vision of the world is different. So sometimes we really close the door of the studio. We don't want to, in a certain way, cooperate. So most of the time, a strong discussion, permanent discussion with manufacturer we work with, and some of the time close the door and don't discuss anything.
You have such a good clients that they appreciate that. They would say, okay, you need your time, take your time.
Well, I mean, they know, I mean, this TV has been bringing them in a totally different area. It doesn't belong to where they are, it doesn't belong, and they're just super happy of the move. So that is the way you have to do. When you don't know much, you are gonna make a lot of errors, but you also have the ability to cross the invisible border that most of the time you know as a professional.
And now there is, let's say, two ways of design. One is goes towards production. One is for more like art and design when pieces are unique or very limited editions. And is it necessary for designer to choose one way, or you work both ways? And what do you think will be the future? Will it be separated and designers have to follow one way?
I think first it's a little bit wider, because first there is industry is car manufacturers, TV manufacturers, is IKEA, it's a heavy industry. Then there is things like Vitra, for example. So Vitra is huge in Europe. It's super huge, but at the end there are 1,200 employees. So it means a fucking small company. It's just nothing. And there, the techniques they employ are in between industry, but also a lot of craftsmanship. Then there is some other level, like Mattiazzi we've been working with, which is, Mattiazzi is it's a small Italian company. It's the next pictures, which is 50 people. And they're just producing with wood, and they're just producing chairs. And then there is, to show you, there is this. This carpet is made in Pakistan, not so far where Bin Laden was shot. So this is Pakistan. It's and it's super old weaving technique that they call kilim. It takes a long time to weave a big carpet. It's nearly a month of work to make it. We've been doing this project in Japan, which is made with old lacquer techniques, which is like techniques that exist since a super long time. So they call them living master. But to make a piece like this, it takes more than a month. So now we think democratic design. Democratic design, what does it mean now? It means that you accept the rules of the industry, the deep rules of the industry. One of the main rules about it is logistic. The main rule of industrial design is make things standard. So it means that they have a similar quality that you can always value and compare. Make them kind of easy to transport and easy to understand. Easy to transport and easy to understand is a speed factor. As you see, you get, you buy. I mean, or you buy, you get. It seems that it should be the only way. The only problem is this is also killing a lot of craft and techniques. It is making disappear a lot of things, because nobody can fight against the huge factory. The huge factories, they invest billions of dollars, and then they just make something that has no cost at all. We consider that it's super important to work with all the techniques that are existing. Some of them, to work with the old craftsman, is even like working with an indigenous species. Because when the old craftsman disappear, people, the technique disappear forever. I mean, it's just like tiger. When there will be no more tiger, there will be no more tiger. That is the same thing with lacquerware, for example. So first thing is, me and Ronan, sometimes it's interesting to make things that are not too expensive, but not to the point of excluding the other one. So maybe it answers to your question of some pieces that are democratic and some of them that are supposed to be art because they are expensive. It's not that they are art because they are expensive, it's more that they are playing with a lot of techniques and flavor which are much more rare and that need to be protected.
And how many of your ideas come into the production? Do you have like, most probably have much more projects that really came into the real production? Or what was the percentage between ideas, amount of ideas you have, and the real products?
It's more that, I mean, there is different kinds. There is many things like this lamp, for example, which is an easy identified idea at some point that we come and it goes to production. And for this, I would say, in a certain way, we've got plenty of opportunity to make realize ideas. But there are things that are slightly different. There are also some fields, some thematic, which we've been working again and again and again, in which we, at a certain point, we try to succeed. I showed you at the beginning the alcove sofa. The closed bed, sorry. So the bed as a cabin. It's been one of the projects of us that's been the more shown visually in pictures. Also, it's one of the projects on which I got the more feedback from people saying, "Oh, I liked it. It made me think about that," and things like that. But the main idea of this project is to deal with architecture instead of making plaster work and to touch. It would be more easy if we can bring things that are already finished, that are gonna, in a certain way, help organizing the space, but in a quick way, and also in a way that you can always remove the thing. Then, from it, one of the best conclusions we made is probably the alcove sofa we made with Vitra, which is here. So those kind of sofas kind of make a box. The box then make a room. But then we've been working a lot also on vertical screens, like the algae we've been doing. This is some screens also made out of textile. So here you see the big walls that they are doing. This is a theme I'm totally obsessed with. And I'm keep on bringing some new proposal for this. And here I feel super frustrated. Because we never find exactly the right partner. We never find the thing. I can't imagine why in DIY shops still we sell painting and plaster and things like this. And we know that we are in a world in which we move much more. We need to be able to, kind of settle in a space, adapt the space to what we need. So I've been doing plenty of research about it, but none of them became super, let's say, market successful. One of the last one was, this is also around the same story, installing curtain, and everything is made that you wouldn't use any tool. I would love to do products that people can super easily assemble by themselves and play with them, like to do products that is something even like a material, like a paint in a way. But you, instead of painting, you like a paint a function, like you would paint a shelf or you would paint a wall or something like this.
You just show alcove sofa, and I know that many of your projects and your designs were copied, and there are so many badly done, not from the real producers, but what's about the rights? Do you defend? Do you have lawyers? How you do this? Because I've seen many products that are produced in China that are just copies, almost exact copies from your products.
We personally at the studio, we don't do anything, never. It's the only person that can make it is a company. Now we work in a world which is a super in which there is a lot of weight inside thing. What I mean by weight is that every action can need quite a lot of energy. And we are hardcore with the company we work with regarding contract. Also, we've been learning more and more, and I have to say that product designer, we come from a ridiculous situation, and all those super nice manufacturers, they were just assholes regarding contract. They were giving super low royalty. You really have to consider, for all of you, that now the balance is changing. Now, one of the big issue is to be also a communication vector. And before, the company was the only one that could be really the communication vector, because before you needed to transport things manually in a certain way. You needed to bring a product somewhere. Also, even 15 years ago, if you wanted to have a publication, you would need to send a file or something. So at a certain point, small product company, small design company could never handle the logistic which is behind. Now we are in a different time. Now, of course, there is the internet. There is the power of picture, and in a certain way, we are also in a time in which people understand better the conceptual thinking behind the design. So somehow they even understand better through the picture that they understand through the end realities. So it makes that somehow also a lot of the designer are a better vector that the company is communication-wise. So that's why sometimes the balance is changing, and contracts have to be resold, and royalties have to be resold. For some of them also we force them to go for a trademark, which means also paying for using our name. Don't be, all of you, don't start to learn what a contract is, because the contract somehow will be your power, and the company in principle is always more powerful than you. So instead of being just a small insect, you need to be just a bigger insect, or even a small rabbit, because you have a contract and they respect you better. And then about numbers of copies that exist in the world, we don't do anything, and sometimes a company protects them, but it's not all the time. It's impossible.
And now my last questions, before questions will be from the audience. Please, can you tell about your collaboration with Vitra, and especially about this chair, vegetal chair, which is going to be a present for the best question?
So Vitra is super clever and super hard. So I go there nearly once a month, and every time in the train back, I love them and I really hate them. Because they are super difficult on ideas. Vitra is really playing on a quite high level industrial setting. So what is strange is inside a product, you kind of collect all the norms of the world. You kind of collect all the problems of the world, and the product has to solve all this. What does it mean? It means that now anything you sell has to go through a certain number of rules. As soon as this product is international, it's just like putting one rule on top of each other. And also those rules are not equivalent. So for example, in Europe, we decide that we put 500 kilo in this direction, and the United States, they put 500 kilo in this direction. So when you put the both rule, you need to reinforce everywhere. The second thing is Vitra is logistic. So it means that everything has to respect next process in the building phase. and often machines have difficulty to speak and to adapt together. So a lot of things about small reinforcement, things to add. So they're just bringing a number of problems which is unbelievable. But they are driven somehow by many people and the Fehlbaum family. And for you that knows partially Vitra, you need to have a look on this book that they call the Vitra project. What is super sure is that Vitra made an huge commitment for architecture and design, and it's been helping a lot. On the Vitra campus in Weil am Rhein, there is the first ever building of the Hadid, the first ever, the fire station. There is the first building of Tadao Endo in Europe. Then they have also the first building of Frank Gehry in Europe. So, and I could keep on doing the example. So I have to say, I think Vitra product, they are an army. An army because Mr. Fehlbaum, at the time who was leading Vitra, has been handling the responsibility to his niece, which is Nora Fehlbaum, so it's the third generation. But Mr. Fehlbaum, he had a real cultural project. And simply to make his cultural project alive, he needed product. The product was the army. The army to gain, I would say, a certain position, to get some money, to get something. So it's they are in a certain way complex to understand, but because they have a really high vision of what design could be. So they're just in regard of this.
And about that chair we're sitting on?
So it's been 4 years. We've been through so many. Some of you have seen the movie that was before. It was raising a certain number engineering question. And so for 2 years we've been working on the things, and 2 years after we had totally lose the shape. The shape was just lost. It was we had been finding the profile. We knew the way we could inject. You have to imagine that to make such kind of chair, at some point they're gonna build a tool, and the price of the tool is 500,000 euro, €500,000, one tool. They can't make any error when they produce the tool. It's not something that you can repair or change, so it's why there is a lot of engineering before, but it's a super strange engineering because it's virtual. You can never make a prototype of the piece. You can make a prototype of the shape, but you can never make the real piece without the final tool. So that's why you spend so many times thinking about what it would be, try to simulate it in many ways through computers and things like this, but you never hold it in your hand. And at some point, we lost the shape. We lost the soul about it. Everything was lost, except that we had been defining the background of the technology. And at this time, we came back to the studio and we made something relatively strange. We've been starting to remodel by yourself, by hand. Also, we've been printing large technical drawing of the things and directly painting or drawing on them. So come back a lot to the hand movement, to something like this. And then it's been kind of making the project alive again. So the full process is 4 years, and somehow it's really exhausting. It really makes some tension. Sometimes you just want to throw it away and finish it because you are losing the thing. But all those frustration, all those problems, and come back to drawings and things like this, I know at the end that the project just became better and better. It just, but still it's relatively frustrating.
Thank you very much.